One night down, one more to go. Hello everyone and welcome to the center of the universe for night 2 of WrestleMania. Last night was already an emphatic, chaotic, and truly memorable evening of WrestleMania. And there is another one on its way. With that being said, let's take a look at everything that you can look forward to on the second night of this historic event. Starting things off on the pre-show, we have a match that is set out to do just one thing, and that is steal WrestleMania weekend. It is the Intercontinental title on the line, and it is Kota Ibushi who will face his challenger Kevin Owens for that very gold. The goal is simple for both men. They just want to put on the best match that they can and try and beat the other to leave as Intercontinental champion. Kota Ibushi and Kevin Owens have yet to have a moment to stare each other down face to face. As Kevin Owens defeated Damian Priest to become number one contender, Ibushi, the champion, was assaulted by none other than the Blackheart Tommaso Ciampa. Kevin Owens would say the next week, as Kota Ibushi was not cleared to be at the event, see him at WrestleMania, bring the best fight that he can, and that's all he needs. And I think we are truly going to get that between these two world-class athletes. Then we turn our attention to the main show itself, and oh boy, are we going to be starting things off with a big one. The grudge will be settled within Trifecta, and the war of the Raw Women's Championship will be finalized between Tessa Blanchard and Women's Royal Rumble winner, Rhea Ripley. A number of months ago, these two were the closest knit unit in the WWE. Trifecta seemed unstoppable in its goal of dominating women's wrestling. Then, now, and forever. All of that was derailed at the Royal Rumble when Rhea Ripley won the event, eliminating fellow Trifecta member Jazzy Gabert in the process. Blanchard seemed to suggest that despite everything that was ongoing, it was always going to be SmackDown Women's Champion Shayna Baszler that Ripley was going to choose. However, when the evening came, Ripley changed her mind, assaulting Shayna Baszler firsthand to make it seem as if it was going to be the Trifecta remain together. Tessa Blanchard was fooled into believing Rhea Ripley's actions. However, it would be Tessa who was the fool. Being floored by Rhea Ripley and put through a table, Ripley would say that she would see her at WrestleMania, and Tessa Blanchard would immediately try and look for an out. Try and get Rhea Ripley back in Trifecta. Try and get her back on her side. But Ripley was having none of it, saying that while Tessa Blanchard may have achieved all the success in Trifecta, it was all for her. Trifecta was dominant, so Tessa Blanchard could stay dominant. And while Tessa Blanchard said the Trifecta had given the world the best women's wrestler of all time, Rhea Ripley said that that very superstar would beat Tessa Blanchard at WrestleMania for the Raw Women's Championship. This has just escalated week upon week as seen in the final Raw before WrestleMania, when in a tag team matchup between Trifecta and Rhea Ripley's partner of choosing, which ended up being none other than Rosemary, they would defeat Trifecta, and towards the end of Monday night, Jazzy Gabert would walk out on Tessa Blanchard and Trifecta. Tessa Blanchard heads into WrestleMania alone with no Trifecta in her corner, and the woman who she dominated women's wrestling with standing opposite her. What will happen when the bell rings and these two former allies collide? It's going to be a great way to kick off night 2. And then the war of ECW continues on as we have the ECW tag team titles up for grabs. It is going to be a very interesting one between Los Ingobernables de Japón and the champions, the Revival. The same old applies as it did in the matches that we saw last night. It is all about LIJ versus ECW. The Revival will not be heading into this contest at 100%, having been assaulted in the parking lot and backstage by LIJ before the 6-man tag team matchup on the last ECW that was abandoned, as we saw. We have heard that there are injuries that Wilder and Dawson are going to be heading into that event with, but that they will still fight. They will still claw, and they will do everything in their power to leave WrestleMania as ECW Tag Team Champions. If LIJ want to fight, then they have to cross one of the best tag teams in the world today. That's as personal as it gets on a brand level. It's personal to the Revival, and it's going to be a damn good fight. And speaking of personal, it is about the era of SmackDown as we head into our next contest on the card. It is the Switchblade Jay White versus the Rainmaker, Kazuchika Okada. Whose era of SmackDown will it be? Will it be the stalwart, the face of SmackDown, the ace of the blue brand, the Rainmaker himself, still standing at the top of it all. At the top of the blue brand where he belongs, heading into his third WrestleMania, his first where he does not vie for the WWE Championship. Or, on the flip side of things, will the Switchblade coin his new era on SmackDown and defeat Kazuchika Okada in the process? Wyatt turned on Okada at TLC, costing Okada the chance to win back the WWE Championship for a third time, and therefore, eventually costing him the chance to be in the Royal Rumble. While Wyatt came up short in the WWE Championship match he would have with Tommaso Ciampa at the Royal Rumble, he would get a Rainmaker for his troubles after running his mouth and screwing over Okada on a number of occasions. Wyatt believes that Okada needs to be gone from SmackDown and that he will do it with his own hands. There has been manipulation, mind games, treachery, and the mind of Jay White at work, coercing the likes of Robert Roode into believing that Kazuchika Okada may well be the problem on SmackDown, as we saw by Wyatt making Roode somehow, some way, assault the Rainmaker. While Okada would overcome Roode in ring action, it would end up being Robert Roode who would feel the brunt of it, having a chair stamped onto his throat at the end, seemingly keeping his secret quiet as to why he turned on SmackDown and Okada to side with Jay White. While we don't know what it may have been, we do know that there is nothing now in the way between Jay White and Kazuchika Okada at the biggest stage that wrestling has. What will happen when these two collide? We will find out. The mind games are over, and Jay White has to step into the ring with one of the best wrestlers in the world and the current superstar of the year. If there is any better place to crown a new era, I'd love to know what it is. But this is big for both men's legacy. For these two, it is not about legacy. It is about who knows what it's going to be about. It is Bray Wyatt, the Fiend himself, versus The Undertaker in the Dead Man's final match. The Dead Man wants to do one last thing, have one more fight on the grandest stage of them all, and take the Fiend down with him. It seemed as if The Undertaker back at No Mercy was ready to call it a career. Defeated by Roman Reigns in the main event for the World Heavyweight Championship, and the crowd chanted The Undertaker, it looked like the Dead Man was ready to say goodbye. But when the lights went out and they came back on, there was the Fiend, assaulting The Undertaker and declaring it essentially that it was not over for the Dead Man's last ride. From there on, The Undertaker would return at the top of the Hell in a Cell with the Fiend standing inside it, and it seemed as if we were set for this stage from there on. From trips to the Firefly Funhouse to the depths of hell with The Undertaker, we are waiting for this match. Whatever may happen, whatever insanity is on our way, we know one thing is for certain. This is the final time the Dead Man steps into the ring, and as he said last night on night one, he has one final goal: to take the Fiend down to the depths of hell with him and rest in peace. Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, they believe that The Undertaker just has to let him in and stop hurting his family, as was evident by the damage that The Undertaker had to do on the final Raw before WrestleMania to his own brother, Kane. When the lights came back up, The Undertaker's face was pouring with blood, and Bray Wyatt said that was the blood of Kane on The Undertaker. This is going to be one very, very interesting affair. You want to talk about mind games? This is as big as it gets. You want to talk about The Undertaker's last match? This is someone on the same level as him. What are we going to be in for? Time will only tell. The honest answer is, we can't predict it. But for our last title match of WrestleMania, we certainly can't predict this one either. The World Heavyweight Championship is up for grabs. It is the King of the Ring versus the Tribal Chief, Pete Dunne, versus Roman Reigns. These two, well, they're two of the best in the world right now. Two of the best, if not the best, on Monday Night Raw. Roman Reigns heads into WrestleMania, inarguably, in my opinion, the most dominant champion currently in wrestling. There has been no one on the level of Roman Reigns since last year's WrestleMania when he defeated The Undertaker inside the Hell in a Cell, would go on to defeat Hiroshi Tanahashi of Great Balls of Fire, and in their subsequent rematch at SummerSlam, go through The Undertaker, AJ Styles, Andrade Cien Almas, Hiroshi Tanahashi one more time, and under controversial circumstances, of course, Kyle O'Reilly. Pete Dunne, on the other hand, has had a similar rise to success. Drafted over to Monday Night Raw, Pete Dunne would win the United States Championship, put on some hellacious matches with it, such as a fatal 4-way at No Mercy, and in his 2 iconic matches with Kenny Omega, both where he ended up on the losing side of things. He would enter the King of the Ring and have to go through the likes of Daniel Bryan and tournament favorite Keith Lee to win that very crown. Roman Reigns has said that from the start this match was never going to be personal. It was about business between these two. And the business was that Roman Reigns wanted to beat Pete Dunne. Pete Dunne said it was personal because wrestling is as personal as it gets to him. However, Roman Reigns, while he said it wasn't personal, would start to kind of show it in a way. He would say to Pete Dunne that should he be World Heavyweight Champion, business would go down. Seats wouldn't sell out on Monday Night Raw. People would start to lose jobs, and families would start to go hungry. And that would be the fault of Pete Dunne. Dunne didn't take too kindly to that at all, and said, or rather showed, what that meant to him. Taking the World Heavyweight Championship from ringside in the final match before WrestleMania on Monday Night Raw between Roman Reigns and Jeff Hardy. Despite being banned from the arena by Sting earlier on in the evening, he would attempt to assault Roman Reigns with it. Roman would get in the counter, but eventually succumb to the bitter end. But before he did that, he admitted the bout was now personal. As soon as Reigns watched Dunne have the title in his hands, he did a 180. And now to Roman Reigns, this match is about more than business and the World Heavyweight Championship. This is 2 of the best in the world right now going at it, and they have added in it a level of intensity and personalness to it that is going to give us one of definitely the best matches of the weekend, and maybe the best match of Roman Reigns' championship reign so far. But the most important question, of course, will it be his last? As Pete Dunne said last night, will the Chief bow to the King? Or will the Roman Empire continue to ride on into another era and Reigns continue to sit at the head of the table? This one, make no mistake about it, is going to be a fantastic match. And then the match. What more can you say other than the photo that stands in front of you? Seth Rollins versus Coren. The most anticipated match there has been. The main event of night 2 of WrestleMania. The biggest match there may have ever been on a stage of WrestleMania. For a long, long time, even during the dominant reign of Seth Rollins, this match was clamored for. This was the match that everyone wanted to see. From the moment that Coren arrived to the main roster, he assaulted Kazuchika Okada and Seth Rollins in their dream match to prove his point. He would assault Seth Rollins at the Royal Rumble. Not the one just happened, the one before. He would injure Rollins on that evening. And when Rollins returned, it seemed as if he was going to challenge Coren for a match at WrestleMania for the ECW title, if not for the intervention of then Royal Rumble winner Adam Cole. Both would go their separate ways for the time being, with Coren winning the ECW Television Championship at that event instead from Jay White, while Rollins would retain his ECW Championship in the main event. They were on the same brands, but their path did not cross. Even when Rollins lost the ECW Championship at SummerSlam, Coren was still nowhere to be seen, refusing to compete on ECW, having lost his television championship to John Cena. Rollins would make his triumphant return early from almost career-ending injury to have one of the greatest matches of all time against Kazuchika Okada for over an hour. Still, Coren was nowhere to be seen. Rollins would admit his intention to win the Royal Rumble from the number 1 spot and headline WrestleMania for the 2nd year in a row. Still, Coren was nowhere to be seen. Bring forth the Royal Rumble, and with 4 left in the ring and only 1 standing on his feet, that being Seth Rollins, there came Coren, flooring Seth Rollins and eliminating him after over an hour within the contest, delivering a clock strikes 12 onto the concrete ramp. Coren would return the following ECW to a chorus of boos, drowning out his theme in the Barclays Center, where he rained down on NXT with an iron fist for so long, with just 2 words to say, "You're welcome." Rollins would finally make his return to the show and demand the match with Coren. He wanted to get Coren at WrestleMania, and he said that it didn't matter how high Coren thought his ego is. Rollins was in the skies with the gods. If Coren stood on top of his mountain, Rollins could stomp it down in an instant. He challenged Coren for a match. The answer was no, as we heard more than once. Eventually, Coren cracked. Seth Rollins would talk about all of his legacy, all of his greatness, how Coren does everything in his power to be hated. Seth Rollins is just hated. Coren didn't like that. He saw the hatred that Rollins had going for him. Even after all of these months of being beloved by the crowd and cheered wherever we go, he saw that He saw why people call Rollins the greatest of all time. And he snapped and said the answer was yes. The match was on for WrestleMania, but it didn't end there. Steps had to be taken further by Coren. On the penultimate ECW before WrestleMania, a legend of ECW, Diamond Dallas Page, made his return to the brand after 2.5 years away to deliver a message to Seth Rollins, to tell him to beat Coren, to destroy him, to do it for himself, to do it for ECW, because without Seth Rollins, there wouldn't be an ECW. And later that evening, Coren would utilize DDP as a hostage to make his demands come true, demanding from none other than Vince McMahon himself the main event of WrestleMania, to be on the closing of Night 2. He got his wish, and when he was asked to put Diamond Dallas Page down, he powerbombed him off the stage and onto the concrete floor. By the time Rollins ran up to him to make the save, it was too late. DDP was down and out. Coren had ran away. Coren said bring the GOAT at WrestleMania as he had Diamond Dallas Page on his shoulders, and the following week, Seth Rollins obliged. For the first time in what must be 2 years, we saw the return of the half-blonde, half-black hair of Seth Rollins, telling Coren if he wanted the GOAT at WrestleMania, he got him. They would fight all show long within that arena, and when the ending came, it was a curb stomp to Coren to lay him out in the final images before WrestleMania. For the first time in a physical interaction, Seth Rollins had the one-up on Coren, and now we have arrived to WrestleMania, to the final standpoint between these two men, to the main event of the grandest stage of them all. The hatred is at an all-time high, the anticipation even higher. This is the match we have longed for. This is the match that everyone has wanted, but this is not a dream match, because there is nothing of a dream about this. These are two hated rivals. They despise each other, and they want to see nothing more than their downfall on a permanent basis in the main event of WrestleMania. This is not going to be a match for the faint of heart. There is going to be blood. There is going to be pain. And for one person, there is going to be the defeat of a lifetime. Will it be the greatest of all time, Seth Rollins, or will it be the sick, twisted bastard that has destroyed and tormented the lives of those he has crossed with in professional wrestling? Will it be the man who holds ECW on his shoulders, or will it be the man who wants nothing more than his own legacy in the spotlight and is willing to end careers and harm innocent people in order to achieve it? We will find out at WrestleMania. That does it for this edition of the Center of the Universe. It is finally time for the match. Coren versus Seth Rollins headlines Night 2. And if Night 1 is anything to go off of, this one could be even better. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you for a personal night of action for Night 2 of the biggest event in wrestling. Thank you guys for watching. Take care, guys, and ta-ra.